Don't sign that paper, Mr. Brooks. Your grandfather never meant for the money to go there. Nia's voice crossed the quiet conference room before Ethan's pen touched the page. Rain tapped against the tall windows of the Brooks Foundation headquarters, turning the city lights into trembling gold. Ethan looked down at the document, then at the 9-year-old girl standing beside the waiting room table. Her old blue backpack rested against her ankle, and the small silver bracelet on her wrist caught the fluorescent light each time she moved. Julian stood near the glass wall, one hand pressed against his coat pocket. "This is a private board meeting," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Nia, you should let the adults handle it." She did not step back. "That is why I waited," she answered. Adults kept handling it, and the same page kept disappearing. Ethan's attention sharpened. On the table lay a transfer agreement that would move $4.2 million from the Foundation's youth housing program into a consulting company controlled by Julian. The signature line carried Ethan's name, but the final page had been attached only that morning. Nia opened her backpack and removed a folded photocopy, its edges softened from careful handling. She placed it beside the agreement without touching anyone. "Your grandfather wrote notes in the margin," she said. "He used a green pen. The note says, 'No private company may control the shelter fund.'" Julian's expression shifted, not into anger, but into something closer to embarrassment. "That copy is incomplete," he said. "The original was reviewed by counsel." "Then show the original," Nia replied. The room fell still except for the rain and the low hum of the air conditioner. Ethan reached for the intercom and called his assistant. "Bring every version of my grandfather's will and the foundation ledger to the boardroom. Not summaries. Originals." Julian turned toward him. "Ethan, if you stop this transfer, the donors will think the foundation is unstable." Ethan looked at the unsigned page. For years, he had trusted polished reports, expensive lawyers, and the family name printed in raised gold letters. Now he noticed a faint rectangle beneath the staple, where another sheet had once been attached. "If the truth makes us look unstable," he said, "then the truth is not the problem." Nia lowered her eyes to the photocopy. She had not accused Julian of stealing anything. She had simply placed the missing question where no one could ignore it. Ethan slid the transfer agreement away from himself and turned off the signature lamp. The decision cost him the evening's donor announcement and the confidence of several board members waiting downstairs. More than that, it meant opening records his family had kept sealed for 12 years. Julian stared at the rain-streaked glass, remembering every shortcut he had called temporary. Then the assistant entered with a locked archive box. A brass label on its side read, "Final will, do not amend." Ethan looked at Nia, then at the box. The room had stopped protecting the family's reputation. Now it had to reveal what the family had protected. Rain ticked against the tall windows while the brass lock on the archive box clicked beneath Julian's unsteady fingers. The sound seemed too small for the room, yet everyone heard it. Nia stood beside the long conference table, her old blue backpack resting against one chair and her silver bracelet catching the white light from the desk lamp. Ethan remained near the sealed records cabinet, watching Julian instead of the box. "The key was never supposed to be used in front of the board," Julian said. "Then it is time someone used it in front of the truth," Ethan replied. The lid lifted with a dry wooden creak. Inside lay a leather folder, 3 ledger books, and a narrow envelope marked with Ethan's grandfather's initials. The final will was not the thick document everyone expected. It contained only 4 pages. Ethan read the first page aloud, his voice measured. The foundation's shelter fund belonged to the public. No private company could control it. The second page named an independent trustee. The third page listed yearly audits. Julian's expression changed before Ethan reached the fourth. "Read the last line," Nia said quietly. A blue pencil mark ran beneath a sentence near the bottom. Ethan leaned closer. "If any trustee redirects the fund for personal gain, authority ends immediately, and the records must be released to the people the foundation serves." The room fell silent. The sentence did not accuse Julian by name, but it removed the shield he had been standing behind. Julian placed both hands on the table. "I knew about the audits," he said. "I did not know the final page had survived." Nia looked at the envelope. Its flap had been opened and closed again, leaving a faint crease. She did not touch it. Instead, she pointed to the date written on the front. "That was sealed 12 years ago," she said. Why does the paper inside smell like fresh ink? Ethan turned toward the records cabinet. Behind the folder, a receipt had slipped from the box. It showed that the archive had been accessed 3 months earlier by someone using Julian's authorization code. Julian closed his eyes for a moment. I opened it, he admitted. I thought there was a letter that could prove my family had always intended to manage the fund. I found the envelope, but I was afraid to look inside. I put it back and told myself I would deal with it later. His confession cost him more than a board seat. It placed his private fear into the open, where no polished explanation could hide it. Ethan did not call security or raise his voice. He took the authorization receipt and placed it beside the will. By sunrise, every record goes to an independent auditor, he said. Julian nodded, but Nia noticed one detail neither man had addressed. The envelope's inner seal was still unbroken. Whatever had been accessed 3 months earlier was not the letter inside. Something else had been removed from the archive, and only one person knew what it was. The archive cart rolled 3 inches across the polished floor before stopping beneath the cold white light. Its loose metal wheel gave a soft click, and Nia's attention shifted from the sealed envelope to a narrow strip of paper caught beneath the cart. She bent down, pulled it free, and studied the faded inventory marks. The paper listed every item placed in the box 12 years earlier. The will, the sealed letter, the beneficiary register. A handwritten note beside the register read, "Transferred to secure review." Nia looked toward Ethan. "Mr. Brooks, the register is not missing from the archive," she said quietly. "It was moved somewhere else." Ethan reached for the paper, but Nia held it out only after checking the back. A fresh blue stamp covered the lower corner. This was added recently. Julian's expression tightened. That could be an old storage notation. Nia shook her head. The ink on the box label is brown. This stamp is blue. Someone changed the inventory after the box was opened. Before Ethan could answer, the elevator chimed. A courier in a navy jacket entered with a hard-sided document case. He checked a clipboard and walked directly toward the archive table. "Foundation records for independent review," he said. "I have a transfer authorization from Ethan Brooks." Ethan did not move. "Which auditor?" The courier glanced at the form. "North Star Compliance." Nia's silver bracelet made a faint sound as she lifted her hand. "That is not the auditor Mr. Brooks selected." The courier's eyes moved to Julian, then back to the clipboard. Nia stepped closer to the table, keeping her blue backpack against her side. "And your paper says the records were collected from the private office, not the Foundation archive." Ethan took the form. His name appeared at the bottom in a printed signature, perfectly shaped, but missing the small upward stroke he always made at the end of the letter N. The room fell silent. Julian stared at the document as if it had appeared from somewhere outside the building. "I did not send him," Ethan said. The courier lowered the clipboard. "I was given the instructions." Nia pointed to the inventory strip. The beneficiary register was moved before this pickup was scheduled. Whoever arranged it knew what the audit would need first. Ethan made a difficult choice. He told the courier to leave the case on the table and wait in the lobby while building security verified the company. It meant delaying the audit and admitting to the board that the Foundation's records could no longer be trusted inside its own headquarters. His hand paused over the phone before he called the board chair. Julian looked at Nia. "How did you notice all of that?" Nia opened her old backpack and removed a small notebook filled with careful copies of labels, dates, and initials. "Because people change stories," she replied. "Paper usually changes more slowly." Ethan studied the false authorization, then the fresh blue stamp. The missing register was no longer only a hidden archive item. It had become evidence that someone was preparing to control the truth before sunrise. Rain tapped against the tall windows of Ethan Brooks's conference room, turning the city lights into trembling ribbons across the glass. On the table, the forged authorization rested beside the unopened document case, quiet enough to make every silence feel deliberate. Nia stood near the edge of the carpet, her old blue backpack hanging from one shoulder and her small silver bracelet catching the cold ceiling light. Julian did not look at the courier's case. Instead, he stared at the blue stamp on the paper. "That stamp came from my office," he said. Ethan's expression tightened. "You told us the authorization was not yours." "The signature is not mine," Julian replied. "But the stamp design is." He reached into his coat, removed a brass key, and placed it beside the document. 3 years ago, I created an emergency authorization template for the foundation. It was meant for storms, power failures, and urgent shelter repairs. The template carried my office stamp because I was the controller. After that, I stopped using it. Nia glanced at the paper. But someone kept the template. Julian nodded, and for the first time that night, his voice lost its careful certainty. Someone kept more than that. He opened the document case without touching the forged authorization. Inside were folders arranged by year, each marked with a shelter location. At the bottom lay a thin gray envelope labeled Beneficiary Register, Transfer Copy. Ethan stepped closer, but Julian raised one hand. If I open it, there is no way to pretend I did not know what was inside. The sentence settled over the room. Julian had spent years protecting a family name, but now the cost was no longer a delayed announcement or an uncomfortable board meeting. It was his position, his access, and the last excuse that he had only been following old instructions. Nia studied him. You can still choose what happens next. Julian looked toward the rain-dark window. My brother told me the register was removed because it contained names the family did not want examined. I believed him. I told myself silence protected the foundation. Ethan's voice remained calm. Did you remove it? Julian closed his eyes briefly. No, but I helped hide the trail. He took a pen from the table and signed a written statement accepting responsibility for the unauthorized archive access and surrendering his controller credentials until the audit was complete. The signature trembled once, then steadied. Ethan did not reach for the paper. He let Julian slide it across the table himself. Nia noticed a small mark beneath the envelope label, a blue triangle beside the words, "Return to original holder." Her bracelet carried the same simple shape, scratched into its silver surface years earlier by someone she could not remember. The register was not merely evidence of missing money. It had been assigned to a person, not a department. Julian unlocked the gray envelope, but before he could open it, the lobby phone began ringing. A message appeared on Ethan's screen from building security. The courier had left, and the document case had been delivered by someone using a foundation vehicle. The case was inside the room, but the person who sent it was already gone. Julian looked at Nia's bracelet, then at the blue triangle on the envelope. Original holder, he whispered. Nia tightened her grip on her backpack strap. Then we need to find out who the papers were meant to return to. Outside, the rain grew heavier, and somewhere below, an elevator began its slow descent. The elevator bell chimed once, then fell silent. In the conference room, every face turned toward the hallway as the building settled into the deep hush that followed a power interruption. Nia noticed something no one else did. The small green light above the service elevator was blinking in a pattern of 3 short flashes. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her old blue backpack. That elevator stopped between floors, she said. Ethan Brooks moved toward the door, but Nia raised one hand. Not the lobby elevator. The service one. The courier used it. Security checked the panel beside the elevator and found no visible signal from inside. The building manager explained that the service shaft had a separate emergency line, but the handset was old and often failed during storms. Julian stared at the gray document case. If he sent the case, why would he stay in the building? Nia studied the wet tire marks visible through the glass doors, then pointed toward the loading entrance. He did not leave in the vehicle. Someone else drove it away. Ethan did not ask her to prove it. He instructed security to call the city fire department and requested the building plans from the manager. Nia remained beside the control panel, listening. At first, there was only the low hum of machinery. Then came 3 faint taps from behind the metal doors. She counted the pauses. He is answering the light, she whispered. 3 flashes, 3 taps. The manager located the elevator between the 2nd and 3rd floors. A maintenance crew arrived with emergency tools, and Ethan kept the hallway clear while Julian contacted the board to report that the courier had been found inside the building. No one tried to move the document case or hide the incident. After several careful minutes, the doors opened enough for security to speak with the courier. His voice sounded thin but steady. He said his name was Martin Hale, and he had been instructed to deliver the case without asking questions. When the elevator stopped, he had assumed the person who hired him would return. That person never did. Martin refused to identify the sender at first. Then Nia noticed a folded receipt beside his shoe. Its corner carried the same blue triangle as her bracelet and the envelope. You do not have to tell them everything, she said. But if the papers belong to someone, keeping quiet may send them to the wrong place. Martin looked at the symbol, and his expression changed. He handed Ethan the receipt. On the back was a handwritten line. Return to the original holder before sunrise. Martin admitted that the sender had promised him payment only after the register was placed in Ethan's hands. The promise was now gone, along with his anonymity. Ethan offered him a safe room and legal counsel, but Martin chose to give a formal statement immediately, knowing the audit would be delayed again. The rescue had brought one witness into the light, but it also revealed that the missing register was being moved according to an old instruction. Nia looked down at the silver bracelet. For the first time, she wondered whether its symbol had been meant to find her. Before sunrise, the foundation kitchen held the quiet warmth of a single lamp and the faint scent of cinnamon toast. Martin sat at the far end of the table with his formal statement untouched, staring at the empty paper cup beside him. Nia noticed before anyone else. Her old blue backpack rested against the chair, and from its front pocket, she took a small wrapped granola bar. You should eat something, she said, placing it on the table without stepping into his space. Martin blinked. I cannot pay you back. It is not a loan, Nia replied. You helped the truth. Someone should help you. Across the room, Ethan watched without interrupting. Julian stood near the window, holding the document case as though it had become heavier during the night. Martin unwrapped the bar slowly. The kindness did not erase his worry, but it gave him enough steadiness to read the first paragraph of his statement aloud. He confirmed that the courier assignment had come through a temporary foundation account, one created for emergency relief payments. The account had not been used in 12 years. Ethan reached for his phone, but Nia raised one hand. Do not call the bank yet, she said. If someone is watching the account, they may move the register again. Ethan paused. This time, the decision belonged to her. He agreed to secure the account through the foundation's legal office instead of using the usual financial channel. The choice protected the evidence, but it came with a new cost. The foundation would lose access to its emergency payment system until the audit was complete. Several shelters might face delays, and Ethan would have to explain that decision publicly before breakfast. Julian looked toward Nia. That account was designed to keep help moving when approval took too long. Then the people who need help deserve to know why it is paused, she answered. Secrets may look fast, but they make the road longer. Martin lowered his eyes to the wrapper in his hands. There is something else, he said. From inside his coat, he produced a narrow envelope marked with the same blue triangle. The sender gave me this after I accepted the job. I was told to open it only if the original holder was found. Ethan did not touch it. Nia studied the seal. The paper was clean, but one corner carried a faint trace of silver dust, matching the bracelet around her wrist. It is for me, she said. Julian's expression tightened. That could be another trap. Nia looked at Martin, then at Ethan. A trap should not decide whether the truth is heard. We can open it where everyone can see. Ethan placed the envelope beneath the kitchen camera, and Martin signed a second line confirming its condition. Nia carefully broke the seal. Inside lay a single sentence in faded blue ink. The first promise was made to a child who was never named. The room became still. The missing register was no longer only a financial record. It was connected to a promise, and someone had expected Nia to be the one who found it. Ethan asked whether she wanted to stop. Nia closed her fingers around the note, not the bracelet. No, she said. But this time, nobody follows the clue alone. Outside, the rain softened against the windows, while the paused emergency account began sending alerts across the city. A small act of kindness had given Martin the courage to speak, and his honesty had given them a choice no one could make quietly anymore. The kitchen camera gave a soft electronic click as its recording light turned from red to green. On the table, the faded blue sentence rested beside Martin Hale's signed statement, while rain traced thin lines down the dark windows. Nia studied the note without touching it again. Ethan Brooks stood near the counter, and Julian remained by the doorway, carrying the weight of everything he had admitted. The child was never named, Nia said quietly. That does not mean the child had no name. Martin looked toward her. What does it mean, then? Nia opened her old blue backpack and removed a small spiral notebook filled with copied labels, dates, and symbols. She placed it beside the envelope. The triangle is not a signature, she explained. It is a protection mark. Julian's expression changed. How would she know that? Nia turned the envelope toward the light. Because the same mark appears on 3 different records, but each record uses a different department code. A signature belongs to a person. A protection mark belongs to information. Ethan moved closer to the table, careful to keep his hands in view of the camera. What kind of information? Nia pointed to the phrase in the note. A promise made to a child. If the child's name was protected, the foundation could have placed money in a trust without recording the name in the public ledger. Julian took a slow breath. A confidential beneficiary account. Not exactly, Nia replied. A confidential promise account. The difference matters. A beneficiary receives money. A promise account protects a purpose until the right person can be identified. The room fell silent. For 12 years, the foundation had treated the missing register as a financial record. Nia had shown them that it might be a set of instructions. Ethan reached for his phone, then stopped. We could call the bank. Not yet, Nia said. If someone moved the register through the emergency relief account, they may expect us to search for a name. We should search for the original rule instead. She turned to Julian. You created the emergency template. What phrase did the old system use for protected promises? Julian lowered his eyes, then answered. Return to the first holder. Nia placed the bracelet beside the envelope. The silver surface carried a tiny blue triangle, worn smooth by years of use. Then the bracelet may not identify a person, she said. It may identify the holder of the promise. Showing it openly cost her the privacy she had guarded since finding it, but she did not withdraw her hand. Ethan understood the sacrifice. Nia, once this is documented, everyone may ask where you got it. Then everyone can ask, she answered. The truth should not depend on keeping one child quiet. Ethan authorized a secure evidence log through independent counsel, delaying the board's morning briefing and giving up his final chance to control the announcement. Julian agreed to submit every remaining access record, including his own. Martin signed the page naming the blue triangle as relevant evidence. Then the printer released one final sheet from the secured archive system. At the bottom was a line no one had seen before. The first holder must be present when the promise is opened. Nia looked at Ethan, and for the first time, the question was no longer who had hidden the register. It was why the promise had been waiting for her. Morning light pressed through the rain-streaked windows of the foundation boardroom, turning the polished table silver. One by one, the trustees arrived with folders, tablets, and expressions shaped by 12 years of confidence. Nia stood beside the evidence table, her old blue backpack resting at her feet and her silver bracelet hidden beneath her sleeve. Ethan remained near the doorway, listening as the board chair announced that the briefing would proceed without any child witness present. The foundation cannot allow an unverified minor to influence a financial decision, the chair said. Nia did not step back. I am not asking you to trust me, she replied. I am asking you to read what the records say. The room grew still. Ethan had already chosen transparency, but this was different. The board was not questioning the documents. It was questioning whether Nia had the right to stand near the truth. Julian moved first. He placed his access tablet on the table and released every controller record, including the entries that could damage his family's reputation. If her evidence is excluded because of her age, then mine should be excluded because of my history, he said. Review both. The board chair ordered security to escort Julian from the briefing, but Julian calmly surrendered his credentials instead. The small electronic card slid across the table and stopped beside the forged authorization. It was the first visible sign that his position could no longer protect him. Nia opened her backpack and removed a folded school worksheet. On it, she had copied the archive dates in careful handwriting, lining up the inventory strip, the emergency account, and the transfer record. She pointed to one blank space. The register was not lost, she said. It was moved between 2 approvals. Whoever moved it knew the promise existed, but did not know where the first holder would be. An independent attorney examined the page, then compared it with the secured evidence log. The dates matched. The board could no longer dismiss the pattern as a child's guess. Ethan faced the trustees. If we continue this briefing as planned, we preserve the appearance of control and risk the integrity of the investigation. If we pause it, the foundation may lose public confidence. The chair reminded him that a delayed briefing could cost major donors, and place his leadership under review. Ethan looked toward Nia, but he did not ask her to decide for him. Then place my position under review, he said. The investigation comes first. His statement changed the room. The board voted to suspend the public announcement and authorize an independent review of the emergency account, the missing register, and every access record connected to it. Ethan remained foundation leader for the moment, but he no longer controlled the process. Nia had not been granted power. She had made the board acknowledge responsibility. As the trustees filed out, the independent attorney noticed a fresh notation beneath the archive message. The first holder must answer one question before the promise can be opened. Nia read the line twice. The question was not written there. Somewhere beyond the rain and the locked records, someone had decided that she already knew it. The brass clock above the foundation archive clicked towards 6, while rain whispered against the narrow windows. Beyond the glass, dawn remained hidden beneath a silver veil, and the building held the quiet of a place waiting for permission to speak. Nia stood beside the independent attorney, her old blue backpack resting against one ankle and her silver bracelet catching the pale light. The board chair gathered the trustees near the doorway. The review begins today, she said, but no one opens that account until the evidence is secured. Nia looked at the fresh notation beneath the archive message. Then the question must be protected too, she said. The attorney studied her carefully. Why? Because if someone hid the register, they may expect the question to lead us somewhere before the investigators arrive. Her answer shifted the room from concern to procedure. She did not ask for control. She asked for a sealed copy of every version of the message, including the paper beneath it. The attorney agreed and photographed the notation under controlled light. The first image showed only the sentence about the holder. The second revealed faint marks pressed into the paper, almost invisible beneath the ink. Nia leaned closer without touching it. 3 small blue triangles appeared in a row, followed by a blank space. That is not a signature, she said. It is an instruction. Julian, standing near the security desk, lowered his eyes. He had already surrendered his controller credentials, but the discovery made his earlier silence feel heavier. The old emergency account had 3 approval stages, he said. A promise, a holder, and a release condition. I never saw the final condition. Martin Hale stepped forward with his formal statement folded inside a clear sleeve. The courier instructions said the case had to reach the first holder before sunrise, he said. They did not say what would happen after that. Nia turned toward Ethan. Do not let anyone use my answer to reopen the account. Ethan nodded. Your privacy is not evidence for sale. For the first time since the investigation began, Nia placed her hand over the blue triangle on her bracelet and made a choice that belonged entirely to her. I will answer the question if it is truly meant for me, she said, but only with the attorney present and only after the records prove who wrote it. The board chair accepted the condition and ordered the archive sealed until the independent review could compare the paper, the account history, and the access records. That decision protected Nia, but it also closed the fastest path to the missing register. A small printer beside the archive desk suddenly released one final page from the secured evidence log. The attorney lifted it, read the line, and went still. It contained the question at last. Who kept the promise when no one was watching? Nia did not answer. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack as the rain grew louder. Somewhere in the Foundation's 12-year history, the truth had not been lost. Someone had been carrying it. The rain had softened to a steady whisper against the Foundation windows when the independent attorney placed the final evidence page beneath a clear sleeve. Nia stood beside the archive table, her old blue backpack resting against one ankle. The silver bracelet marked with a blue triangle caught the pale light each time her fingers moved. I will not ask you to answer yet, the attorney said. First, the records must answer us. Ethan Brooks remained several feet away, silent by choice. For once, the room did not belong to his authority. It belonged to the sealed files, the timestamps, and the child who had noticed what trained adults had overlooked. The attorney compared the ink pressure on the question with 2 archived statements from Martin Hale. The match was close, but not complete. Then she placed a Foundation authorization from 12 years earlier beside the page. The room seemed to lose its air. This question was written by Ethan Brooks, she said. Ethan looked toward the glass wall, where city lights trembled in the rain. That is my handwriting, he admitted. But I do not remember writing it. Nia did not step toward him. She studied the page instead. The attorney explained that the question had been written before Ethan became board chair, before the emergency account was opened, and before the consulting company received control of the archive system. It was part of a promise recorded in a private memorandum. The first holder could access the account only after proving that the truth had been protected without recognition or reward. Julian lowered his gaze. Then the promise was never about money, he said. It was about custody. The independent attorney opened the secured access log. One name appeared again and again over 12 years, always during quiet hours, always without a payment request or leadership credit. Martin Hale. He had checked the archive seals, renewed the storage authorization, and refused every request to move the document case without the proper verification. Martin's voice came through the attorney's phone. I was told only this, he said. If the right child ever arrived, I was to make sure the evidence reached her safely. I never knew her name. Nia's expression changed, not with fear, but with recognition. Someone had carried the truth because a promise mattered more than applause. Ethan finally turned back to the table. I wrote the question, he said, but I did not keep the promise alone. Nia touched the blue triangle on her bracelet. Then the answer is not one person, she said. It is everyone who chose not to look away. The board chair ordered the log preserved as part of the independent review. The archive remained sealed, and the missing register stayed beyond reach. But the question had changed shape. It was no longer asking Nia to prove her worth. It was asking whether the foundation was ready to honor the people who had protected the truth before anyone powerful noticed. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, Ethan surrendered his private access key to the attorney. For the first time, the silence around the promise felt less like a locked door and more like a witness waiting to speak. The rain had softened to a steady hush against the foundation windows when the independent attorney returned to the conference room with a thin folder and a sealed evidence sleeve. Nia sat at the end of the table, her old blue backpack resting beside her chair. The silver bracelet on her wrist caught the overhead light each time she moved. Ethan remained near the doorway, without his private access key, his hands resting openly at his sides. The archive cannot be opened yet, the attorney said. But the review has established one important fact. The blue triangle was not a signature. It was a direction. Nia studied the copy of the notation. 3 small triangles appeared beneath a line of faded handwriting. They point to the order of the promise, she said. First, someone had to make it. Second, someone had to carry it. Third, someone had to release it. The attorney nodded. That matches the secured evidence log. Julian entered quietly, carrying a printed access report. He placed it on the table and kept his distance from Nia. The disputed consulting company had access to the foundation archive for 12 years, he said. My credentials were used to request the document case, but the request did not come from me. His voice remained controlled, yet the admission changed the room. He had not simply handed over records. He had surrendered the authority that connected him to them. Who used your credentials? Ethan asked. Julian looked toward the attorney. That is what the independent review must determine. I will not edit the answer, even if it reaches my own family. For the first time, Ethan did not respond as the foundation leader. He looked at the board chair instead. Then the review must include every decision I approved during that period. The board chair recorded the statement without softening it. It will. Nia lowered her eyes to the evidence sleeve. She could see the outline of a single page inside, but the seal remained unbroken. The question is still waiting, she said. Yes, the attorney replied. And you do not have to answer it alone, in private, or before you are ready. Nia touched the blue triangle on her bracelet. I will answer only when the person who wrote it is identified. The room became still. Ethan did not ask her to trust him. He did not offer a promise he could not prove. Instead, he moved a chair away from the table and sat where the attorney could see him clearly. Then I will wait under the same rules, he said. A soft chime sounded from the attorney's tablet. Martin Hale had submitted a new statement from a secure location. It contained only one sentence. The first holder was never the person with the most power. Nia read it twice. Beyond the sealed archive, another name was waiting. And this time, the truth was not asking who could unlock the door. It was asking who had been standing beside it all along. Martin Hale's statement remained open on the attorney's tablet when footsteps sounded beyond the foundation conference room. They were measured, unhurried, and too early for the staff scheduled to arrive. Nia looked toward the glass wall. A man in a gray coat stood at the security desk, holding a document case and an authorization letter stamped with the foundation seal. "He is not on the morning access list," Nia said. Ethan turned toward the hallway, but he did not move ahead of her. "Attorney Rivera, can you verify the seal before anyone enters?" The independent attorney nodded and opened the secured evidence log. The courier presented his letter through the glass. "I am authorized to retrieve the archive materials," he said. His voice was calm, but his fingers tightened around the case handle. Nia studied the page from her seat. The blue triangle appeared beneath the signature, just as it had on the archive notation. Yet the triangle pointed left. The original mark on Martin Hale's statement pointed right. "That symbol is facing the wrong way," Nia said. The courier glanced down. "It is only a printing variation." Nia shook her head. "No, the two marks were made by hand. They are not decorations." Attorney Rivera enlarged the image on the tablet. The foundation seal was genuine, but the authorization number belonged to a request closed 3 years earlier. The courier's letter granted access to a register that had never been released. Ethan's expression changed, not with anger, but with recognition of the risk. "No one opens that case," he said. The courier stepped back from the desk. "Mr. Brooks, delaying this transfer may place the foundation in breach of its agreement." Ethan looked at the attorney. "Then document my refusal and notify the board chair. I will not use my position to settle this privately." That decision placed his authority under immediate review, but it also removed the courier's strongest argument. Attorney Rivera contacted the board chair, who arrived minutes later with 2 compliance officers. She ordered the document case placed inside a transparent evidence cabinet without opening it. The courier surrendered the case only after receiving a written receipt and a notice that his credentials would be independently verified. Nia watched the cabinet lock click into place. The room grew quiet again, but the silence no longer felt empty. A second tablet alert appeared. Julian had released the access records from the disputed consulting company. The records showed that the same authorization number had been requested by someone inside the foundation, not by Martin Hale. Nia touched the silver bracelet marked with the blue triangle. "The person who made the false request knew the archive existed," she said. Ethan answered carefully, "And they wanted us to believe the door was already open." The board chair sealed the hallway and suspended all archive access until the independent attorney completed the review. Behind the glass, the courier's case waited like a question no one could safely ignore. The truth had not been taken from them. It had been protected from the wrong hands. The independent attorney arrived before sunrise, carrying a narrow evidence folder and a small silver seal. The foundation conference room was lit by pale morning light, but no one reached for the coffee waiting on the side table. The courier sat beyond the glass with his document case secured by the board chair's seal. Nia stood beside the old blue backpack, her silver bracelet resting against her wrist. "Before anyone opens the case," she said, "please compare the authorization number with every record that used it." The attorney looked toward Ethan. He did not answer for her. Instead, he slid the tablet across the table. "That is her observation," he said. "The review belongs to you now." Julian entered through the second door with a password card between 2 fingers. His expression was controlled, but his voice was quieter than before. "I released the access records from the consulting company," he said. The number was not assigned to Martin Hale. It came from a dormant foundation credential. The board chair immediately instructed the attorney to record the statement and keep the credential inactive. Julian then placed his own controller badge beside the tablet. "I am surrendering my access until the review is complete," he said. "If I keep control, people can question the evidence, even if the evidence is true." Ethan watched the badge leave Julian's hand. The decision cost him more than money. Julian had managed the disputed company for years, and removing him meant admitting that loyalty could not replace verification. "Do it," Ethan said. "No one receives special protection because they worked for me." The attorney compared the number against the secured evidence log. One entry appeared 12 years earlier, long before the present dispute. Another appeared 2 hours before the courier arrived. Between them was a blank stretch marked only by a blue triangle. Nia leaned closer without touching the screen. That mark is not a signature, she said. It tells someone to look somewhere else. The attorney enlarged the notation. Under the triangle, a faint line of writing became visible. It did not identify a person. It identified a condition. Martin Hale was brought into the room by the board chair with the attorney's permission. He kept his hands folded over a plain envelope. I was told to protect the archive, Martin said. For 12 years, I kept it separate from ordinary foundation files. I was never told who would come for it. Only that the first holder had to answer before the promise could be opened. Nia's eyes moved to Ethan, then to the sealed case behind the glass. Ethan noticed the question forming before she spoke. If the answer belongs to Nia, he said, she decides when to give it. The attorney nodded and added a privacy restriction to the review record. Nia understood what that meant. The case would remain sealed. The missing register would stay out of reach. To protect her privacy, she would have to wait beside a mystery that had already touched her life. She pressed her thumb against the blue triangle on her bracelet. Then nobody asks me alone, she said. The attorney wrote the condition down. Behind the glass, the courier's case remained closed, while the old authorization number opened a different question. Who had awakened a promise that had been waiting for 12 years?